G'day guys. Just a bit of a look at memory and learning, stuff like that. You know, what is the best way to go about it, how to eat and stuff like that, which is important. I came across a study just recently that sort of looked at, they've actually, what they've actually found was that a key amino acid seems to play a very important role in sort of both brain aging and peripheral aging. So it plays in both, but it seems to be all tied into the hypothalamus. So it's quite interesting in that regard. I wasn't aware of it. I was actually searching for something completely different and just came across the study. So it was by sheer accident in that regard. So this is what they consider a previously unknown sort of mechanism for aging. So yes, once we think we know everything, we talk about deuterium, we talk about, NAD, we talk about all these other things, and then all of a sudden we realize, oh, there are more. I'm not surprised, that amino acid is much higher, is found in animal foods. So that doesn't surprise me. Also, certain, the nutrient that's required to synthesize it as well is also found in animal foods in greater amounts. So it doesn't surprise me again that's the case. It sort of explains. I mean, you take a look at like recently, Bart was actually, Garth Davis and all that. And he's, I'm 56, he's 53. Bart's about the same age as he is. And the guy actually looks quite old. He's aging quite rapidly on his Fagoon diet. He's only been on it for about a bit over a decade, 12, 15 years, he says. You never can trust these people. They're very, when they use the word plant-based because they're very selective in the way they go about it and all that. And we know they all cheat because once they actually get off the veganerized diet after less than 5 years, they usually tell us that they've cheated. And the ones that actually are able to stay on it for longer is because they're constantly cheating. So, the worst I get is probably cheating with a bit of alcohol and stuff like that, and the occasional coffee. But these guys are scoffing down dead flesh. Yes, the flesh stuff, which they are, which is like a religious no-no to them. I mean, I'm not in a in a carnivore cult, and I'm not in a religious cult, and pretty much both my faith does not ban alcohol, and I'd basically tell people in the carnivore community to go if they told me that I couldn't have my odd indiscretion. Is it contraindicated? Yeah, definitely is. Both, it's not healthy for you to drink. It's not healthy for you to do a number of things. But, the reality is we're humans living in a different food environment, different cultural environment, and we're going to have some indiscretions. We just own up to it. Us carnivores, the difference is the Vagoons never do, because for them it's like a theology, so. But again, it's good to see that there is research out there sort of backing up sort of our sort of arguments that animal foods are very important, and so they've actually found that there is, let me just share my screen. I'll just, so we can get into to looking at it now. Okay, so we've got this. This is the study. That's the study. Hypothalamic Menin regulates systemic aging and cognitive decline. So that's pretty much the gist of it. And I actually was able to find this. Now, this doesn't come out of the study because the problem is most of the diagrams in the study are just too technical and too complicated to go through, and it would take ages to go through. So I had to find something which was reasonable to sort of explain this in that regard, which is simple to understand. So you've got basically here, you've got your nucleus. Well, there's the nucleus. There's the cytoplasm. So that's the inside of the where all the little organelles are, like your mitochondria and everything else, are in the cytoplasm. Okay, and from the cell membrane right through to the mitochondria, most of the like glycolysis will run right through the cytoplasm into the mitochondria, because in the matrix is where we've got the Krebs cycle, the Krebs as they call it. Now in here we need this. This is what is it called? A histone, histone H3. So if it had a 1 in it, it'd be H1. So this is H3, okay? So these are the things that basically tell, it's sort of like a methylation. So 1 is a bit more methylating, 3 is slightly less methylating. So, you know, I'm not going to get into methylation now, but it's telling the DNA that I want you. So when this interacts with Menin, then it sends an instruction in the nucleus to the DNA to use this instruction for transcription to produce an enzyme. Okay, so that's sort of critical about creating this enzyme. So I'm not going to it's phosphor something, whatever, dehydrogenase. I can't even pronounce it properly. So, yeah, anyway, I think it's in the study somewhere here. The actual, anyway, we'll look at it after. And so what it is actually doing, so once you get this this sort of thing going, then you pretty much, there's this so this is telling to produce the serum. And so you can see here in the deficient one, and here it's actually working in that regard. So that's going down in terms of the performance. This is actually working right through. So the it's a glutamate type receptor, this one, and that's learning long-term potentiality or something like that, anyway, from memory. So pretty much you need serum to do all this in order to actually learn and memorize things. Okay, so that's potentiation. That's it. So to improve the potentiation of your brain to learn new stuff and sort of amplify the actual learning sort of thing. Without serum and without these pathways being run in the proper way, we don't get this sort of this, because it's a glutamate, as I said. You get this amplification, and that amplification allows you to learn. Okay, so obviously at night you get GABA, which actually increases, which sort of calms you down and, to sleep. So, and you consolidate memories then. You're not learning. In the daytime, you want to have those excitatory type neurotransmitters that are going to basically facilitate learning, if that makes sense for you. Okay. So that's because we need to basically have this receptor here that gets this activation. It's a glutamate receptor, as I said earlier, that you get this excitation. I've talked about this before about glutamate, but you don't want it at night, too much over stimulation in that regard. So but for learning, obviously you don't want to be half asleep. You're not going to learn. Okay. So you really need this to help with sort of synaptic plasticity, learning, sort of the neuromechanisms for memory formation in a sense. Yep. Anyway, so what they've done is they sort of knocked out this pathway. So once you knock out that pathway, okay, that's sort of gone. Then you can't really, you can't really then produce the sort of stuff you need to synthesize the amino acid, the serine. That's the important thing that actually helps with this sort of mechanism. Now let's look at the actual study where it says, we're not going to read the whole lot of it. People want to read, we'll just read the abstraction. Aging is a systemic process which is a risk factor for impaired physiological functions and finally death. Wonderful. Molecular mechanisms driving aging processes and the associated cognitive decline are not fully understood. The hypothalamus acts as an arbiter that orchestrates systemic aging throughout neuroinflammation signaling. So what they've actually realized is that if they inhibit that pathway, they can increase neuroinflammation, derange the signaling. Remember what they showed here: high inflammation levels, metabolism unbalanced, and systemic aging when you're deficient in MEM1. So we clear? So you need MEM1 in order to, and here's MEM1. Okay. So this is sort of called multiple endocrine neoplasma 1. And these are the SNPs. So all these, and their alleles. The magnitude is quite high, 5.8. There's quite a few of them. I actually checked my 23andMe, but I couldn't find one. So they're all, in mine comes up as not genotyped, which means that I didn't buy the more expensive thing that actually looks at every single gene. So these are not covered in the standard. I don't think even in the $200 one. I think you have to do the really expensive total genomics to be able to get these ones. But these are all related. Look, you'll know, because from the age of 20, 25, you start having a whole lot of problems. So you would know if you had these genes. You couldn't miss them, and the doctors would test you so if you had like rapid cognitive decline and stuff like that. So yeah, so this is the sort of the actual gene. There's quite a few of them. There's another page that's got a number of others, additional ones. So there's quite a few there. And you can see, and all of them are 5.8 order, so very high order, you know. So we're talking about, you know, this is observational. We're talking close to 6, and 6 is, you know, pretty much, you know, and depending on your epidemiologist, it's 6 to 10 for the inference of causality. But we've mechanistically shown that these genes are involved in this. So we don't need we don't need to do observational studies. We've actually shown mechanism. So this is a magnitude defined from mechanistic studies. So exactly like, you know, when it comes to homocysteine and methylation, when it comes to the MTHFR gene, that's only 2.8 magnitude. So it's a very high magnitude. Most people don't live a long life. Let's put it that way. When they have, most people have already died. They don't even get. They're lucky if they get to 50, maybe a bit over 50, but many of them die. So in younger age, and so pretty much multiple endocrine neoplasma type 1, you pretty much start having like parathyroid tumors at the age of 20 and 25. You know, so the most common feature of the first clinical manifestation of 90% of individuals with MEN1 with onset typically between 20 and 25 years of age. So they get these parathyroid type tumors. So if you've got a parathyroid issue at a younger age, you may have these genetics. You know, or you know, you've got a child may have. I'm not saying has, but I'm just saying potentially. And you know, this also creates a whole lot of things. You know, they usually consider you need an endocrinologist, a gastroenterologist, an oncologist, clinical geneticist. So you're going to get, you know, basically cancer-related stuff. You're going to get hormonal stuff, and you're going to get gastrointestinal stuff. So it causes a lot of derangement. That's why, as I said earlier, metabolism unbalanced. But obviously, you know, for the rest of us that don't have these genetics, okay, it just shows that how important something like serin is. So, you know, and pretty much when we're looking at, we'll find that we need serin, very important for our neurotransmitters. I'm just quickly going to show you that parathyroid issues, pancreas, islet cells. So these are some of the big ones in one of these other syndromes: parathyroid glands, pituitary gland, pancreas, so the islet cells, also the digestive tract. These are, and your stomach. So these can create a lot of problems for a lot of people. This, as I said, Menin, a scaffold protein that controls gene expression and cell signaling. So it's really important. So the protein menin is encoded by the MEN1 gene, which is mutated in patients with multiple endocrine neoplasma type 1 syndrome. So, see, although menin acts as a tumor suppressor in the endocrine organs, it can, you know, if it's deranged, it in other ways, it can actually also, you know, facilitate with leukemia, but that's a completely different kettle of fish. It's also related to a whole lot of cancers, a raft of cancers of all sorts, you know, so there's good information that goes back years and years, multiple Neoplasma 1 is an autosomal dominant cancer predisposition syndrome characterized by parathyroid pancreatic islet, so pancreatic pituitary tumors, as well as other neoplasms such as gastrinomas, carcinoids, lipomass, angiofibromas, angiomyolipomas, and thyroid tumors. So while these are not metastatic types, but create clinical effects by overproduction of hormones such as insulin, glucagon, prolactin, parathyroid hormones, gastrin, growth hormone. So people that have got this can, like they can get that really strong growth hormone where they grow really, really crazily tall. So it does derange the hormones as well in that regard. So foods, pretty much you're looking at, high in it. Well, that's just fortified, which is nonsense. Chicken, steak, turkey, pork, lamb, pork, chicken, breasts, tuna, so these are the large amounts. You definitely want, from 100 grams, you definitely want like anywhere between 1,500 to more. And when it comes to the animal foods, they're all, just absolutely high as ribeyes, everything's over 1,500 per 100 grams, which is 3.53 ounces, as you can see. So we can go all the way down. We're still finding animal foods. At some point, we're going to hit the plants because they got rough, orange roughy, another fish. Anyway, oh, that's right. I have to go to the low ones. I have to select low to find plants. I'll actually have to go grains. I'll go to the highest of the grains. As you can see, uncooked oats has got about 1,000. Nobody's going to eat like 200 grams. You'd have to eat like 500 grams of oats. And that's a lot of oats to get 5,000. You can pretty much eat 250, half that in a steak, and it's going to be more bioavailable anyway. So, and then everything starts dropping after that into the much lower stuff. So as we go down, cooked oatmeal drops even further. Wild rice, you'd have to eat just absolutely like a kilo of pasta to basically get to basically 150 grams of meat. It's just a joke. This is why plant-based diets age you. This is why, and it's really because they're not providing. So while some people have got those genetics that cause this problem, when it comes to most other people, what we're talking about here is where we see the decline in menin probably after 50, we start seeing a bit of a decline. And that's really, he has been now mechanistically connected to aging. And they've actually done, as I said, in this study, people at their own. So hypothalamus X, our recent findings reveal that menin plays important roles in neuroinflammation and brain development. Yes, yes, Vagoon's brain development. You guys are suffering a bit of shrinkage, aren't you, nowadays? Here we found that the hypothalamic minimum signaling diminished in aged mice, with the correlation with systemic aging and cognitive decline, cognitive deficits, restoring menin expression in ventromedial nucleus of hypothalamus of aged mice, extended lifespan. So if you've got an aged mice, if you're an aged person and you're eating enough meat, you're going to get enough of serin and its precursor glycine. And what else do we glycine and some methyl something transferase or something like that. It's called, it's some enzyme that I can't remember its exact name, that basically brings synthesizes serin. So pretty much we get plenty of glycine because there's, again, in animal foods much higher. So we can synthesize it when we're through these genetics. Okay, on the one hand, the menin. So the menin with glycine, we can produce it. Plus, even if this over time down-regulates slightly with the amount of meat we're eating, we're getting more than most people get. And that is why we can maintain into old age. And it's the reason why Maasai and all these populations look robust and very healthy, and they do not decline, but they go on and just slightly, very marginally have a decline and then drop dead because no more cell division. That means have healthy, long lifespan. And what do those Maasai men eat when they got sick? More meat. It's wondrous, you know. They probably, even though they don't know, anecdotally they know that meat helps. They're getting the serin. It's preventing their aging, improved learning and memory, ameliorated aging biomarkers, something that they can actually measure, while inhibiting menin in or middle, in the sort of the young or the middle. That's what they I forget the name, something or middle-aged mice induced premature aging and accelerated cognitive decline. Sort of explains everything about the middle-aged vagoon. Goes to hell in a handbasket. Decline rapidly. We further found the menin epigenetically regulates neuroinflammation and metabolic pathways, including D-serin metabolism. Aging associated menin reduction led to impaired D-serin release in the VMH hypothalamus neural circuitry, while D-serin supplementation rescued, so if you supplement, rescued cognitive decline in aged mice. Got it? Collectively, the menin serves as a key regulator of systemic aging and aging-related cognitive decline. Yes, eat a steak. I can't guarantee you're going to live forever, but you're definitely going to live longer than a vagoon. I can guarantee you that. So people want to read this, I'll provide all attachments, as I always do in that regard. Now, obviously, this is playing a big role in... So menin is not only playing a role, it's also playing a role in the regulation and has also tumor suppression capabilities. So it's probably, you know, it's one of the reasons why I've encouraged people with cancer to consume more meat for that reason, to get more serum. They could supplement if they do so desire as well. But, you know, if you're eating plenty of meat, you should get enough. You can synthesize, unless you've got these genetics, and you would know from much younger age, you'd have a, you know, if you've got parathyroid, I would say there's a strong likelihood and you've had it from a very young age, the likelihood that you've got these genetics is very strong. So anyway, I don't need to share this. I might as well waffle without. So pretty much the take-home message: eat your meat, boys and girls, to maintain your marbles so you don't have the brain fog of a vagoon. Now, if you don't do that, you'll end up like some of those vagoons that as they get older, they start losing their marbles, they age rapidly, and they become very, very weird. So if you don't want to become a weird, demented old fart, eat your meat is basically the golden rule. Eat your meat, or basically become a demented old fart. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. I will attach all this to the description, so anybody can go to their heart's content and look at it at their own leisure. But pretty much, the take-home message is that for a long time, we've got all these longevity gurus and all that telling us, it's, take this or take that. And they have this very reductionist way. Now, supporting, the NAD pathway is important, but too much, that means once you go over 300 milligrams from everything, food, supplements, and all that, then it starts causing a whole lot of other problems. You can't force things to speed up. You can create problems. And so, let alone, some of the other supplements that they take are very contraindicated because they create a lot of micronutrient deficiencies. And also when we're looking at taking NR or NMN in high doses, or even niacin in high doses, it can inhibit gluconeogenesis and cause a whole lot of other derangements. So don't do it, okay? Your body has certain physiological parameters that it operates in. And what we're finding more and more, that a lot of the animal stuff does wonders. I mean, we've learnt about, because niacin is much higher in animal foods, in particular, piggy. Yes, cute little piggy is very high in niacin, and thiamine as well. Again, so don't neglect to eat a little bit of piggy, and also when it comes to a whole lot of other nutrients like taurine, very high in animal foods, primarily found only in animal foods. And again, so many things, it regulates so many things around the body, it fixes so many things and all that. Again, animal foods are playing a very important role. And I wouldn't be surprised that as we go along, the choline stuff I've talked about recently, some of the, most people think about the neurotransmitters, acetylcholine and stuff like that. But there's a whole lot of different pathways, and even the TMAO stuff actually shows there's a whole lot of benefits for the cardiovascular side and also for the cancer side. The complete opposite what we've been told. So as we go along, we start realizing that nutrients, which are much higher, both macro and micro, concentrated in animal foods, particular certain peptides, certain proteins that we find, certain amino acids in animal foods, seem to have these fantastic properties. And the reason why is, why wouldn't they? It's what our species evolved on for millions of years. That's what the N15 data has shown. So it does not surprise me this sort of video is sort of making the case for meat that these important nutrients that have been neglected are possibly, I can't, without, long-term experimentations, but from this sort of mechanistic evidence, it's quite clear that if you deny your body key macro and micronutrients that primarily are found in animal foods, you will suffer for it. And we've already seen the decline of modern day humans, the level of cancer, the level of cardiovascular disease, the level of strokes, the level of a whole lot of raft, of diseases that have actually emerged, and even some really strange sort of rare type things that didn't really exist. Anybody thinking about Pottinger's cats? Yes, exactly. So when a species is not eating its species appropriate diet, it will start to suffer. Now, do you need 100%? If we look back in history, we're probably doing about 60 or more percent, and it seemed to be pretty good, But back then also we weren't consuming a whole lot of green leafy vegetables with a whole lot of protease inhibitors to inhibit proteins and a whole lot of other anti-nutrients. So we soaked and did a whole lot of things, fermented a whole lot of things. So we did a whole lot of things slightly differently to mitigate a lot of those things. Something we don't do today because convenience factor. Yes, nobody wants to do that sort of stuff. Easy. Get rid of the middleman. You don't need the plants. Get rid of them. At the end of the day, they were just basically starvation foods, or because people are undernourished for a very long time, they threw those additional things in by treating them, by fermenting them, by soaking them and doing all these other things in order to get those additional nutrients. But today we don't have that problem, especially in Western countries and all that. We got too much. So we don't need those additional foods. Just jettison them and get your health back. Then you're going to get rid of all the anti-nutrients. Your requirements in terms of the RDIs are going to be much lower as well. So for a lot of things, because when it comes to fat and protein from animal foods, the amount of cofactors required goes down. Thiamine, as an example, halved. You only need half. And the funny thing is, piggy is one of the best sources, tuna being the next best source. So even though we need less compared to glucose metabolism, animal foods still give us more. So, and that's the take-home message. And you need to communicate to your relatives and friends and other people, is that the nutrients in animal foods are superior. You can never, beyond crap, because that's what I call it, beyond crap is never going to replicate the rich tapestry of micro and macros found in animal flesh, period. Never going to. And if people go down that other path, they will create a whole raft of new health problems for themselves. It's bad enough that we're down to 30% animal-based, 70% plant-based already. That's a sad diet, the majority of people. If we go any further, it's going to create a lot of health problems. And we're going to see more rapid aging like we see amongst the vagoons. And we're also going to see far more neurological issues, learning difficulties, memory issues. And the thing that worries me even the most is children that are still developing. Do we really want to destroy the next generation? Yes. So we as carnivores, people that are informed, need to get the information out. So please share this video. Please get the message out there to your relatives and friends so they do the right thing by themselves and their children. Anyway, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed it. See yous.